You blessed my wedding, then you blessed my wife.
The handcuffs bit into Logan Reese's wrists as flames licked the collapsed roof of Denise's boutique, casting orange shadows across his face. Through the smoke and chaos, he locked eyes with his wife, her silk robe pristine, her tears perfectly timed for the cameras already rolling. "Tell them why I did it, Denise." Logan's voice cut through the sirens like broken glass. "Go on. Tell them what you and Pastor Kane did to me." The crowd pressed closer. Neighbors who'd smiled at barbecues now whispered behind cupped hands. Officer Carla Monroe tightened her grip on Logan's arm, her expression unreadable as she'd learned to make it 20 years ago when they'd dated in college. "Logan, please," Denise sobbed, stepping closer to the broad-shouldered man beside her. Pastor Kane Merritt's hand found her shoulder, a gesture that looked protective to the cameras but possessive to anyone who knew where to look. "You're sick," Kane said, his voice carrying that practiced authority that filled megachurch auditoriums. "Look what you've done to your family," Logan laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. "My family?" He turned to the growing crowd of churchgoers, neighbors, and news crews. "Ask them about the motel receipts. Ask them about the bank accounts. Ask them about my son." The fire chief approached, clipboard in hand. "Sir, we found accelerant patterns." This wasn't an accident. As they led him toward the police car, Logan caught sight of his 10-year-old son, Ethan, peering from behind Denise's legs, eyes wide with confusion and something else. Fear? Of him? The car door slammed shut. Through the window, Logan watched Kane's arm slip around Denise's waist, the perfect grieving widow and her spiritual counselor. The performance was flawless. But Logan had been conserving antique documents for 15 years. He knew how to read between faded lines, how to spot forgeries, how to preserve what others wanted destroyed. And he'd been documenting everything. 6 months earlier. The manila envelope had no return address, just Logan's name typed on cheap paper. Inside his archives office, surrounded by climate-controlled cases holding centuries-old manuscripts, he almost threw it away. Anonymous mail usually meant cranks wanting him to authenticate their grandmother's priceless Bible. But something made him open it. The first photograph showed Denise's BMW in a motel parking lot. The second showed her walking toward room 237, key in hand. The third captured her opening the door for Pastor Kane Merritt, the man who'd performed their wedding ceremony a decade ago. Logan's hands didn't shake. In his profession, you learn to handle fragile things with steady fingers. He laid the photos on his desk like evidence in a catalog, noting timestamps, license plates, the distinctive cross pendant Kane always wore. His phone buzzed, a text from Denise. "Working late at the boutique. Don't wait up." The metadata on the photos showed they were taken last Tuesday, the same Tuesday she'd claimed to be at the boutique until midnight, doing inventory. Logan opened his laptop and began typing detailed notes, cross-referencing dates with their shared calendar. 14 late nights in the past 2 months. 14 times she'd claimed to be working while the photos suggested otherwise. That evening, Denise swept into their suburban home like she owned the world. Her hair was professionally styled, her makeup camera ready. She kissed his cheek, the same spot she'd kissed for 10 years, and he smelled cologne that wasn't his. "How was your day, honey?" she asked, already moving toward the stairs. "Fine," Logan replied, watching her ascend. "Yours?" "Exhausting. We're redesigning the entire fall display." Logan nodded and returned to his book, an 18th-century treatise on paper conservation. The author had written extensively about identifying forgeries, how the smallest inconsistencies revealed the truth beneath beautiful lies. At dinner the next night, Logan's parents visited. His mother, Margaret, had always preferred Denise to him. His father, Robert, a retired pastor himself, spoke glowingly of Kane's ministry. "That man's doing God's work," Robert said, carving the roast. "The way he's grown that congregation, truly inspiring." "He's been such a support to our family," Denise added, her hand finding Logan's across the table, especially during Logan's difficult periods. Logan's difficult periods. She'd been using that phrase more often lately, creating a narrative he hadn't authorized. "What difficult periods?" Logan asked. An uncomfortable silence. His mother's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "The anger issues, dear," Margaret said softly. "The way you've been intense lately." Logan looked around the table, his parents' concerned faces, Denise's perfectly practiced sympathy. When had this story been written? When had they all agreed he was the problem? I haven't had anger issues, he said carefully. Logan, Denise's voice carried that patient tone she used with difficult customers. Remember last month when you threw the book? He did remember. He'd been reading about a $50,000 discrepancy in their joint account, money that had vanished into something called KM Consulting, and had slammed the financial statements on his desk in frustration. In their bedroom, alone. How had that become throwing a book in anger? That's not what happened, he said. Honey, you're doing it again, his mother said, getting defensive. The conversation moved on, but Logan filed away every word. Later, alone in his office, he opened a new document and began typing. Not just about the photos now, but about conversations, about the slow rewriting of their history. 2 weeks later, he installed a hidden camera in their bedroom. State-of-the-art, motion-activated, recording to a cloud account only he could access. He told himself it was for protection, to document what was really happening versus what Denise claimed was happening. The first recording was devastating. Not because of what it showed, but because of what it revealed about how thoroughly he'd been manipulated. Denise on the phone with someone. He's getting suspicious. We need to move faster. No, he won't fight the custody arrangement. He's too passive. He's always been too passive. Then Kane's voice, tinny through the speaker. What about the psychological evaluation? My friend at the courthouse says if we can establish a pattern of instability. I've been building that for months. His own parents think he's losing it. Logan watched his wife, plotting his destruction with the man who'd blessed their marriage. The woman who'd promised to love him through sickness and health was engineering his sickness to justify her betrayal. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came 3 days later, when Ethan ran to him after school, backpack dragging behind him. Daddy, why does Pastor Kane sleep in your bed when you're at work? The world tilted. Logan knelt to his son's eye level, keeping his voice steady. What do you mean, buddy? I came home sick yesterday, and Mommy said not to go upstairs because Pastor Kane was taking a nap in your room. But I heard them making noise. Logan's chest tightened. What kind of noise? Like when you and Mommy wrestle, but louder. That night, Logan confronted Denise, not with accusations, but with questions. Where had she been yesterday afternoon? Who had she talked to? The lies came easily, expertly crafted. You're paranoid, she said, brushing her hair before bed. It's not healthy, Logan. Maybe you should talk to someone. Maybe I should talk to Pastor Kane, Logan replied. Her brush paused for just a moment. That's a wonderful idea. He's helped so many people through difficult times. The next morning, Logan called Kane's office. The secretary, a sweet elderly woman named Mrs. Patterson, scheduled him for that afternoon. Kane's office was a shrine to success, awards, photos with politicians, a wall of theology degrees. The man himself looked like he'd stepped from a magazine, tall, silver-haired, with the kind of smile that made you want to confess your sins and donate your savings. Logan, my friend, Kane stood and extended his hand. I'm so glad you reached out. Denise has been worried about you. Logan didn't take the offered hand. I've found some interesting photos. Kane's smile never wavered, but something shifted behind his eyes. Oh? Logan placed the manila envelope on the desk. Kane opened it, examined the contents, then looked up with practiced concern. Logan, I think you need help. This looks like harassment, maybe even stalking behavior. The timestamps match your calendar. I checked your church website. You had no official appointments on any of these dates. I provide private counseling to many parishioners. Denise has been struggling with your behavior. The word hung in the air like smoke. Behavior. As if Logan's discovering their affair was the real problem. What behavior, specifically? Kane leaned back in his leather chair. The anger, the paranoia, the obsessive documentation of your wife's activities. She's scared, Logan. She should be. That was Logan's mistake. Those 3 words, spoken in a moment of raw honesty, gave Kane everything he needed. Kane pressed a button on his desk. Mrs. Patterson, could you please call Officer Campton? I have a situation that requires immediate attention. Within minutes, Detective Will Campton entered, a heavy-set man with tired eyes and a familiar bearing with Kane. Too familiar. Will, thank you for coming so quickly, Kane said. Logan here has been stalking his wife, taking unauthorized photographs, and just threatened her. That's not, Logan began. He said she should be scared, Kane continued. I'm concerned for her safety. Detective Campton studied Logan with professional disinterest. Sir, I'm going to need you to come with me. I haven't done anything illegal. Stalking and harassment are illegal, sir. We have evidence, these photographs, and a credible witness statement from Pastor Kane. Logan looked at the photos scattered on Kane's desk. Evidence of their affair had become evidence of his crime. The truth had been weaponized against him. At the police station, Officer Carla Monroe processed his paperwork. Their eyes met briefly, recognition, surprise, something else. Logan Reese, she said, reading the file. I know that name. Carla. He hadn't seen her in 20 years. She'd been skinny then, all elbows and fierce opinions. Now she was solid, competent, wearing authority like a uniform that fit. What's the charge? She asked Campton. Stalking, harassment, possible domestic violence. Wife wants a restraining order. Carla's expression didn't change, but Logan caught the slight tightening around her eyes. She'd always been good at reading people. I'll handle the intake, she told Campton. In the interview room, she closed the door and sat across from him. 20 years, she said. You look like hell. I feel like it. Tell me what's really happening, Logan. And don't lie to me. I've gotten good at spotting lies. Logan told her everything. The photos, the recordings, the financial discrepancies he'd discovered. Kane's threat. The way his own family had been turned against him. Carla listened without interrupting, taking notes in a careful hand. You have proof of the affair? She asked. Photos, recordings, bank records. And they're claiming you're the one behaving inappropriately. It's like they've been building a case against me for months, creating a narrative where I'm unstable and dangerous. Carla tapped her pen against the table. Logan, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Have you ever hit your wife, threatened her, destroyed property? Never. Raised your voice? Thrown things? Logan thought about the financial statements he'd slammed down. I've been frustrated. I've raised my voice during arguments. I threw some papers down once when I found out about missing money. Papers? Bank statements. On my desk. In my office. Carla wrote something down. How has this been characterized to others? Denise told my parents I threw a book in anger, and they believed her version. They weren't there. They have no reason to doubt her. Carla closed her notebook. Logan, you're in serious trouble. Even if you're telling the truth about the affair, the way you've gone about investigating it, the secret recordings, the photographs, that's not going to look good to a judge. So I'm supposed to just accept being cheated on and financially. Manipulated? No, but you should have hired a lawyer and a private investigator instead of doing surveillance yourself. The door opened. Detective Campton entered with paperwork. Restraining order's been approved, he announced. Mr. Reese, you're prohibited from going within 500 feet of your wife, your home, or her place of business. You have 30 minutes to collect essential items under police supervision. Logan felt the ground shift beneath him. Where am I supposed to live? That's your problem, Campton said. But I'd figure it out fast. Violation of this order is a felony. An hour later, Logan stood in his childhood bedroom at his parents' house, a duffel bag of clothes at his feet. His mother had made up the bed with the same Star Wars sheets he'd used in high school. This is temporary, she said, smoothing the comforter, until you get help. I don't need help, Mom. I need a lawyer. Logan, honey, denial is the first sign of, I'm not in denial, I'm being framed. His father appeared in the doorway. Son, we've seen the pattern. The anger, the paranoia, the accusations against Pastor Kane. That's a good man you're maligning. He's sleeping with my wife. That's enough. Robert's voice carried the authority of decades in the pulpit. You will not speak against a man of God in this house. Logan stared at his parents, people who'd raised him to value truth above comfort, and realized they'd already chosen sides. Kane's version of events had been accepted as gospel. That night, Logan called his sister Carrie. She taught 4th grade, lived alone, and had always been the pragmatic one in the family. I heard, she said before he could speak. Mom called, and I think there's more to this story than what Mom's telling me. Logan felt his first moment of hope in days. You believe me? I believe you're not crazy. Beyond that, I'm withholding judgment until I see evidence. Can you meet me tomorrow? I need to show you something. They met at a coffee shop in the next town over. Logan brought his laptop and external hard drive containing the recordings and financial documentation. Carrie watched the bedroom footage with increasing anger. When Kane's voice came through the speakers discussing Logan's psychological evaluation, she slammed the laptop shut. Jesus Christ, Logan! Now you see why— No, I see why you're screwed. She opened the laptop again and rewound to the beginning. This is devastating evidence of their affair and conspiracy. It's also completely inadmissible in court because you recorded it without consent. Logan's hope crumbled. What do you mean? I mean, you've created the perfect catch-22. The evidence that would exonerate you can't be used because obtaining it was illegal. So what do I do? Carrie stared at the paused video, Denise's face frozen in mid-conversation with Kane. You need to get smart. And you need to get mean. I don't know how to be mean. Then you better learn. Because they're playing for keeps, and you're still playing by rules they threw out months ago. That evening, Logan hired Marcus Webb, a divorce attorney with a reputation for handling high-conflict cases. Webb's office was sparse, functional, a place where emotions were dissected like evidence. Your wife's smart, Webb said after reviewing the case. She's built a narrative where you're the aggressor and she's the victim. The restraining order reinforces that narrative. But the financial records show that money was moved, not stolen. She's on the accounts. She has every legal right to move money between accounts. To her lover's consulting company? You can't prove KM Consulting belongs to Kane Merritt without evidence that connects him to it. And you obtained that evidence illegally? Logan felt the walls closing in. So she wins? She gets to destroy my life and walk away with everything? Webb leaned forward. I didn't say that. I said she's smart. But smart people make mistakes when they feel secure. What kind of mistakes? The kind that happen when they think they've already won. 3 months later, Logan had moved into a studio apartment above a used bookstore. The space was cramped, but it had good light and reminded him of the archives, surrounded by old stories, preserving what others had discarded. His visitation with Ethan was supervised, court-ordered sessions in a sterile family services building. The boy seemed confused, withdrawn. He'd started asking questions Logan couldn't answer. Why don't you live with us anymore, Daddy? Because Mommy and I are having problems. Is it because you're sick? Logan's chest tightened. Who told you I was sick? Mommy said you have anger problems, and that's why Pastor Kane has to help take care of us. Logan knelt to his son's level. Ethan, I need you to listen carefully. I'm not sick. I love you more than anything in the world. And no matter what anyone says, I will always be your daddy. But Pastor Kane said— What did Pastor Kane say? Ethan's voice dropped to a whisper. That sometimes daddies get sick in their heads and forget how to love their families. And that's why he has to help Mommy. Logan felt something break inside him, not just his heart, something deeper, the part of him that had always believed in playing fair, in truth winning out, in the system working. What else did Pastor Kane tell you? That I shouldn't be alone with you because you might get angry and hurt me? Logan pulled his son into a hug, feeling the boy's small arms wrap around his neck. I would never hurt you, Ethan. Never. But even as he said it, Logan could feel his son's hesitation. The poison was already spreading. That night, Logan called his private investigator, a woman named Sarah Chen, who specialized in corporate fraud. He'd hired her with money from selling his rare book collection, a decision that felt like selling pieces of his soul. I found something interesting, Sarah said over the phone. KM Consulting isn't just a shell company. It's been active for 3 years, receiving payments from at least 12 different sources. What kind of sources? Wealthy parishioners, mostly. People who've donated to Kane's church and then received consulting services from KM. Logan understood immediately. He's been double-dipping, getting donations for the church and consultant fees for private services. That's tax fraud if he's not reporting the consulting income properly. And it gets better. 3 of those clients are currently going through messy divorces where Kane provided marriage counseling. Same pattern, identical. Kane counsels the couple, develops a relationship with the wife, the marriage falls apart, and somehow the wife ends up with a very favorable settlement. Logan felt a cold clarity settle over him. He's done this before. Multiple times. And here's the kicker. One of those wives was so grateful for Cain's support that she donated her entire divorce settlement to his church. Jesus. Gets better. I traced the church's financial records. That donation was immediately transferred to KM Consulting as a consulting fee. Logan saw the whole picture now. Cain wasn't just having an affair. He was running a systematic operation. Seduce the wife, destroy the marriage, take the money. Sarah, I need you to document everything. Every transaction, every client, every donation. Can you do that legally? Corporate records are public. Tax filings are public. I can build a case without breaking any laws. Do it. The next morning, Logan received a call from his lawyer. We have a problem, Webb said. Your wife is requesting a psychological evaluation. She's claiming you've been erratic, making paranoid accusations, and she's concerned about your mental fitness for custody. I'm not crazy. I know that. But she's got witnesses who will testify to your concerning behavior. Your parents, several church members, even some of your former colleagues. Logan felt the trap closing around him. What colleagues? Dr. Harrison from the University Archives. He says you've been asking unusual questions about document forgery and evidence tampering. Logan had consulted Harrison about the technical aspects of digital evidence, how to verify timestamps, how to prove recordings hadn't been altered. Professional curiosity had been reframed as paranoid fixation. They're building a case that you're mentally unstable, Webb continued. The evaluation could go either way, but if it goes badly, I lose Ethan completely. You lose everything. Custody, visitation, maybe even your job, if they can convince the university you're unfit. Logan closed his eyes. When's the evaluation? Next week, with Dr. Patricia Hoffman. That evening, Logan researched Dr. Hoffman extensively. She was respected, published, seemingly objective, but as he dug deeper, he found something interesting. Dr. Hoffman had been the psychological evaluator in 2 of Cain's previous divorce cases. Both times, she'd found the husband psychologically unfit for custody. Logan called Sarah Chen. I need you to look into Dr. Patricia Hoffman, he said. Specifically, her relationship with Cain Merritt. The psychologist? The psychologist who's about to evaluate me for custody. On it. 3 days later, Sarah called back. Hoffman's clean professionally, but I found something interesting. She's on the board of directors for Cain's church. Conflict of interest? Huge conflict of interest. She should have recused herself, but she didn't disclose the connection. Logan smiled for the first time in months. Can you document that? Already done. Board meeting minutes going back 5 years. She's been a significant donor and active participant. How significant? 6-figure donations annually. Logan felt the pieces clicking together. Sarah, I need you to dig into something else. I want to know everything about Cain's previous divorce cases. Not just the financial stuff, but the psychological evaluations, the custody decisions, everything. That's going to be expensive. Court records, expert witness testimony, psychological reports. Do it, whatever it costs. Logan was done playing defense. It was time to build his own case. The psychological evaluation was scheduled for a Friday afternoon. Logan arrived early, dressed conservatively, carrying a folder of documents he'd prepared carefully. Dr. Hoffman was a severe woman with steel gray hair and piercing eyes. Her office was filled with diplomas and awards, impressive credentials that masked her compromised objectivity. Mr. Reese, I'm going to ask you some questions about your recent behavior and emotional state, she began. I want you to be completely honest. Of course, Logan replied. But first, I'd like to clarify something. Are you familiar with Pastor Cain Merritt? Dr. Hoffman's pen paused over her notepad. Why do you ask? Because I've discovered you're on the board of directors for his church. That seems like a significant conflict of interest. I don't see how my religious affiliations are relevant to this evaluation. Logan opened his folder and placed a document on her desk. This is a copy of the church's tax filing from last year. Your name is listed as a board member and significant donor. Dr. Hoffman glanced at the document, her composure cracking slightly. I think we need to reschedule this evaluation with someone else, Logan continued. Unless you'd prefer to explain to the state licensing board why you didn't disclose this conflict. The evaluation was rescheduled with Dr. Michael Torres, a psychologist with no connection to Kane or his church. Logan's preparation paid off. Dr. Torres found no evidence of mental instability, paranoid delusions, or unfitness for custody. But Kane and Denise were already moving to their next strategy. Logan discovered it when he picked up Ethan for his weekly visitation. The boy was quiet, withdrawn, clutching a small recorder. "What's that, buddy?" Logan asked as they drove to the park. "Mommy said I should record our visits," Ethan said quietly. "In case you say bad things about her and Pastor Kane?" Logan pulled over, his hands shaking. "Ethan, did Mommy tell you what kind of bad things? She said you might try to make me hate her. Or tell lies about Pastor Kane." Logan stared at his son, his beautiful, innocent son, and realized they were using him as a weapon, not just keeping him away from Logan, but turning him into a spy, a recording device, a tool for gathering evidence. "Ethan, I need you to listen to me very carefully," Logan said. "I would never ask you to hate your mother. I love you and I want you to be happy. But I need you to know that it's not okay for adults to ask children to spy on their parents." "But Mommy said—" "I know what Mommy said. But sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, even when they think they're protecting you." That evening, Logan called his lawyer. "They're using my son to gather evidence against me," he said. They gave him a recorder. "That's unusual," Webb said, "and potentially problematic for them. Child exploitation in custody cases is taken very seriously." "What can we do?" "Document everything. Keep the recorder if he gives it to you. We might be able to use this to show parental alienation." But Logan was thinking bigger now. He'd learned from Kane and Denise, learned that the truth was just raw material to be shaped, that evidence was only as good as the story it told. He was ready to start telling his own story. That weekend, Logan made a decision that would change everything. He drove to the motel where Kane and Denise had conducted their affair and rented the same room, room 237. The manager, a tired-looking man named Pete, recognized Logan from the photos he'd been shown. "You're the husband," Pete said matter-of-factly. "I am." "Sorry, man." "That sucks." Logan studied Pete's face, weathered, honest, the kind of person who'd seen enough drama to recognize real pain. "Pete, I need to ask you something. Did anyone ever ask you about my wife and Pastor Kane?" "Yeah, that detective, Campton. He came by asking questions, wanted to know if I'd seen anything unusual." "What did you tell him?" Pete shrugged. "Truth. They were here every Tuesday for about 6 months, always paid cash, always used the same room. Lady was real particular about the time, always arrived exactly at 2 p.m., left by 4 p.m. "What did Detective Campton say?" "Nothing much, just took notes and left. But he seemed more interested in whether you'd been around, asking questions, taking pictures." Logan understood. Campton hadn't been investigating the affair. He'd been building the stalking case against Logan. "Pete, would you be willing to testify about what you saw in court?" "Sure, if it helps. Like I said, that sucks what they did to you." Logan handed Pete his business card. "My lawyer might call you." As Logan left the motel, he felt something shifting inside him. For months, he'd been reacting, defending, trying to preserve what was left of his old life. But his old life was gone. Denise had murdered it systematically with Kane's help. It was time to stop mourning and start building something new. That evening, Logan called Sarah Chen. "I need you to expand the investigation," he said. "I want to know everything about Kane's operation, every woman he's counseled, every divorce he's been involved in, every dollar that's moved through his accounts. That's a massive undertaking, Logan. The cost, I don't care about the cost. I want to destroy him completely." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "Logan, what you're talking about, that's not justice. That's revenge. Sometimes they're the same thing." Over the next month, Sarah's investigation revealed the full scope of Kane's operation. 5 marriages destroyed over 3 years. Hundreds of thousands of dollars funneled through fake consulting arrangements. A pattern of predatory behavior that targeted vulnerable couples and exploited their trust. But the most damaging discovery came from an unexpected source. Lydia Best, the real estate agent who'd helped launder money through KM Consulting. Lydia had been arrested for tax fraud in an unrelated case. Facing serious prison time, she decided to cooperate with investigators. Her testimony revealed not just the financial crimes, but the personal details of Kane's methodology. He called it rescue counseling, Lydia told Logan's lawyer during a recorded deposition. He'd identify marriages where the wife was unhappy, then position himself as the understanding counselor who could help her find herself. The seduction was gradual, professional seeming. By the time the affair began, the wives felt like he was saving them from terrible marriages. What about the financial arrangements? Webb asked. Kane had it systematized. First, he'd convince the wife that her husband was financially controlling or hiding assets. Then he'd help her protect herself by moving money to accounts he controlled. After the divorce, he'd take a percentage as consulting fees. How much? 50% of the liquid assets plus ongoing donations to the church. Logan listened to the recording with growing amazement. Kane wasn't just a predator, he was a criminal mastermind who turned marital counseling into a lucrative criminal enterprise. How many people know about this? Logan asked. Just Kane, myself, and the wives, Lydia said. The wives think they're getting legitimate financial advice. They don't realize they're being systematically robbed. Logan now had everything he needed to destroy Kane legally. But legal destruction would take years, and Kane would have time to cover his tracks, silence his victims, maybe even disappear. Logan wanted something more immediate, more personal. He started with the recordings. Using professional audio editing software, Logan created a podcast called The Shepherd's Game. Each episode featured carefully edited clips from his secret recordings, presented as an investigative series about corruption in religious institutions. He was careful not to use any material that could be traced back to his illegal surveillance. Instead, he focused on the financial records, the witness testimony, the pattern of behavior across multiple cases. The podcast launched anonymously on a Tuesday morning. By Wednesday, it had been downloaded 50,000 times. By Friday, it was trending on social media. Kane's church board called an emergency meeting. The next phase was more direct. Logan hired a team of actors to create fake social media profiles, grieving wives, concerned parishioners, former employees. They began posting carefully crafted comments on Kane's social media accounts, sharing stories that aligned with the podcast revelations. The comments were subtle, believable, devastating. They created the impression of a groundswell of victims coming forward, even though Logan had orchestrated every word. Within 2 weeks, Kane's congregation had split. Half believed the accusations, half dismissed them as persecution. The church board voted to suspend Kane pending a full investigation. But Logan wasn't finished. He'd learned something from watching Kane and Denise, that destroying someone's reputation was more effective than destroying their life. People could recover from financial ruin, legal troubles, even prison, but they rarely recovered from public humiliation. Logan began phase 3. He created a fake whistleblower website called Truth About Trinity, Trinity being the name of Kane's church. The site featured carefully documented evidence of Kane's crimes, presented in a professional, journalistic format. But the most devastating section was titled The Victims Speak. It featured testimonials from the wives Kane had manipulated, their stories presented with their permission, obtained through the fake social media accounts Logan had created. The testimonials were real. Logan had simply edited together fragments from his recordings, the depositions, and public statements. The result was a damning portrait of systematic manipulation and abuse. The website launched on a Sunday morning, just as Kane was preparing to deliver what would become his final sermon. By Sunday evening, the site had crashed from traffic. Major news outlets were picking up the story. Kane's church board called another emergency meeting and voted to remove him permanently. But Logan saved the most personal attack for last. He'd discovered that Kane had been married before, 20 years ago. His first wife had died in what was ruled a suicide, but Logan's investigation suggested something more sinister. Using public records and private investigators, Logan built a case that Kane's first wife had discovered his criminal activities and threatened to expose him. Her death had been suspiciously convenient. Logan couldn't prove murder, but he could create reasonable doubt. He presented this information to a true crime podcast with a large following, providing enough documentation to make the story credible. The podcast episode titled The Pastor's First Wife was released on a Tuesday. By Wednesday, police had reopened the investigation into the death. Kane's world was collapsing, but Logan wasn't finished with Denise. While Kane's destruction played out publicly, Logan had been quietly building a case against his wife. The financial records Sarah had uncovered showed a clear pattern of theft, tax evasion, and fraud. But Logan's most devastating discovery came from an unexpected source, Ethan's school records. During the custody battle, Logan had requested all of Ethan's educational and medical records. Buried in the medical files was a DNA test that had been conducted as part of a routine blood screening. The test revealed that Logan was not Ethan's biological father. Logan stared at the laboratory report, feeling something inside him break and reform. 10 years of loving a child who wasn't his. 10 years of believing in a family that had never existed. But as the shock faded, Logan realized this wasn't just devastating news, it was perfect ammunition. If Ethan wasn't his son, then Logan had no legal obligation to pay child support. More importantly, it meant Denise had committed paternity fraud, a crime that could invalidate their entire marriage and any claims she had to his assets. Logan called his lawyer immediately. "Marcus, I need you to see something," Logan said, his voice steady despite the earthquake in his chest. An hour later, Webb stared at the DNA report with professional amazement. "This changes everything," Webb said. "If you can prove she knew about the paternity and concealed it, we can argue fraud in the inducement of marriage." "What does that mean?" "It means the marriage itself might be void. No alimony, no community property claims, no nothing. She'd have to return everything she took." Logan felt a cold satisfaction settle in his bones. "Can we prove she knew?" "We'll need to subpoena medical records, look for other DNA tests, maybe find communications where she discussed it." "But Logan," Webb's voice carried a warning, "this will destroy your relationship with Ethan permanently. Once this comes out, there's no going back." Logan looked out the window at the city below. People living their normal lives, unaware that some families were built on lies so deep they poisoned everything. "He's not my son," Logan said quietly. "He never was." The legal filing was brutal in its precision. Logan petitioned to void the marriage based on fraud, requested immediate cessation of all support payments, and demanded return of all marital assets. The DNA evidence was attached as Exhibit A. The local news picked up the story within hours. "Local man discovers son isn't his after 10 years. The details were salacious enough to go viral. The cheating wife, the corrupt pastor, the fake paternity." Logan watched Denise's carefully constructed image crumble in real time. Her boutique's social media pages filled with comments calling her a fraud, a liar, a gold digger. Customers canceled orders. Suppliers demanded immediate payment. But the most devastating blow came from an unexpected source, Ethan himself. Logan was sitting in his apartment when his phone rang. Ethan's voice was small, confused. "Daddy? I saw the news. They said you're not my real daddy." Logan closed his eyes, feeling the last pieces of his old self die. "That's right, buddy. But you've always been my daddy. You taught me to ride a bike. You helped with my homework. I know. And I loved every minute of it. But your mother lied to both of us." "I don't understand." Logan chose his words carefully. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, Ethan. Sometimes they tell lies because they're scared or confused. Your mother told a very big lie, and now we have to deal with the consequences." "Does this mean you don't love me anymore?" The question hit Logan like a physical blow. He thought about lying, about preserving some relationship with the boy he'd raised. But lies had destroyed his life once already. "I will always love the time we had together," Logan said. "But things are different now. You have a real father somewhere, and you deserve to know who he is." "I don't want a different daddy. I want you." Logan felt tears he hadn't allowed himself to shed. "I know, buddy. But sometimes what we want and what's real are different things." The call ended with Ethan crying. Logan sat in his empty apartment, surrounded by the remnants of his old life, and felt something fundamental shift inside him. He was done being the victim in other people's stories. 2 weeks later, Logan made his final move. He discovered the identity of Ethan's biological father through the DNA testing service's database. The man was Dr. Richard Graves, a married physician who'd had a brief affair with Denise 11 years ago. Dr. Graves had no idea he had a son. Logan could have simply sent the information anonymously. Instead, he scheduled a meeting. Dr. Graves was a distinguished man in his 50s. with graying temples and the confident bearing of someone accustomed to respect. They met at a coffee shop downtown, away from prying eyes. "Mr. Reese, I'm not sure why you wanted to meet," Dr. Graves said, settling into his chair. Logan placed the DNA report on the table. "Because you have a 10-year-old son you don't know about." Dr. Graves read the document, his face growing pale. This can't be right." "Denise Morrison, she was Denise Walsh when you knew her. 11 years ago, brief relationship ended when you went back to your wife." Recognition dawned in Dr. Graves' eyes. "Denise, but she never said..." "And she never contacted me about. She let me believe the child was mine. For 10 years, I've been paying child support, providing insurance, being his father. Meanwhile, you've been living your life unaware that your son exists." Dr. Graves stared at the report. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to step up, take responsibility, be his father. My wife, my family, this would destroy everything." Logan smiled, a cold expression devoid of warmth. "Welcome to my world, Doctor." Dr. Graves looked up sharply. "You're enjoying this? I'm evening the score. For 10 years, I lived a lie. Now it's your turn to deal with the truth." Logan stood to leave, then turned back. "Oh, and Doctor, I've taken the liberty of having papers drawn up transferring all parental rights and responsibilities to you. You'll be hearing from my lawyer soon." Within a month, Dr. Graves's marriage imploded. His wife filed for divorce, taking half his assets and his medical practice's patient list. The local medical board launched an ethics investigation based on the circumstances of Ethan's conception. Ethan, caught in the middle of it all, began seeing a therapist for trauma counseling. Logan felt no satisfaction in the boy's pain, but he felt no guilt either. Everyone was simply dealing with the consequences of choices they'd made, or choices that had been made for them. The final phase of Logan's revenge played out in court. Kane was indicted on 17 counts of fraud, tax evasion, and racketeering. The investigation into his first wife's death had uncovered enough suspicious evidence to charge him with conspiracy to commit murder. Denise faced her own legal troubles. The paternity fraud had triggered an IRS investigation into their joint tax filings. If she'd known Ethan wasn't Logan's son, then their filings had been fraudulent for a decade. But Logan's most elegant revenge was still to come. During the divorce proceedings, Logan's lawyer presented evidence that Denise had been systematically stealing from her own boutique. The financial records showed a pattern of customer payments being diverted to personal accounts, inventory being sold without documentation, and tax obligations being ignored. The boutique was forced into bankruptcy. Denise lost everything: her business, her reputation, her assets, her son. Logan received a call from Officer Carla Monroe on a Tuesday evening. "Kane took a plea deal," she said. 20 years, no parole. "What about the murder charge? Dropped as part of the plea, but 20 years at his age, he'll die in prison." Logan felt a quiet satisfaction. "And Denise? 5 years for fraud plus restitution. She'll be broke when she gets out." Logan thanked Carla and hung up. He walked to his window and looked out at the city lights, thinking about the man he'd been 18 months ago, trusting, naive, believing in fairness and justice. That man was gone, burned away like paper in a fire. The man who remained was harder, colder, more practical. He understood now that justice was something you created for yourself, not something the system provided. A week later, Logan received an unexpected visitor. Ethan stood at his door with Dr. Graves, both looking uncomfortable and lost. "He wanted to see you," Dr. Graves said. "Before we moved to Chicago." Logan knelt to Ethan's level, studying the boy's face. He could see it now. The resemblance to Dr. Graves in the jawline, the eyes. How had he missed it before? "Hi, buddy," Logan said. "I brought you something," Ethan said, holding out a small wrapped package. Logan opened it carefully. Inside was a hand-drawn picture of the two of them riding bikes with "My Daddy" written in crayon across the top. "You'll always be my real daddy," Ethan whispered, "even if the blood is different." Logan felt something crack inside his chest, not breaking but opening. For the first time in months, he remembered what love felt like without calculation or strategy. "You'll always be special to me too," Logan said, "no matter what happens." Dr. Graves cleared his throat. "We should go." As they walked away, Ethan turned back once. Logan waved, watching the boy disappear around the corner. Later that evening, Logan burned the picture, not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. He'd learned that the past was a luxury he couldn't afford. Every attachment was a weakness, every sentiment a liability. The man he'd become had no room for such things. 6 months later, Logan sat in the auction house watching strangers bid on the remnants of his old life. Denise's boutique inventory, Kane's church assets, even some of Dr. Graves's medical equipment, all being sold to satisfy legal judgments. Logan bid on one item, a small oil painting that had hung in Kane's office. It showed a shepherd watching over his flock, painted in soft pastels that suggested peace and protection. He won it for $50. That evening, Logan hung the painting in his apartment, but not before making one small modification. Using a fine brush and black paint, he added smoke rising from the pastoral scene, thin wisps that transformed the peaceful landscape into something ominous. The shepherd was still watching his flock, but now they were burning. Logan stepped back to admire his work. Perfect. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I know what you did. We need to talk." Logan smiled. Another game beginning. Another opponent who thought they could outmaneuver him. He'd learned to enjoy such challenges now. Logan typed back, "I'm listening." The response came immediately. "Not over text. Meet me at the old church on Maple Street." Midnight. Logan checked his watch. 11:30 p.m. Just enough time to prepare. He opened his laptop and began typing detailed notes about the evening's events, saving everything to multiple cloud accounts. If someone was planning to threaten him, they'd discover that Logan Reese had learned to document everything, and that the quiet paper conservator they'd once dismissed was now something much more dangerous. Logan grabbed his coat and headed for the door. In the reflection of his hallway mirror, he caught sight of himself, lean, sharp-eyed, wearing confidence like armor. The man who'd once been destroyed by other people's lies had become someone who could craft better lies than his enemies. He'd become exactly what the world had demanded he become. Logan turned off the lights and walked into the night, ready for whatever story wanted to destroy him next. He'd learned to burn them all down first. The church parking lot was empty except for a single car, a black sedan with tinted windows. Logan parked across the street and observed for 10 minutes, noting sightlines, exit routes, and potential complications. Old habits from his new profession. A figure emerged from the sedan. Female, average height, moving with purpose. As she stepped into the streetlight, Logan recognized her. Dr. Patricia Hoffman, the psychologist who'd tried to evaluate him. Interesting. Logan approached carefully, hands visible, posture non-threatening. He'd learned that appearing harmless was often more dangerous than appearing dangerous. "Dr. Hoffman," he said. "Interesting choice of venue." "I wanted somewhere private," she replied. "Away from recording devices." Logan almost smiled. If she only knew how many recording devices he now carried as a matter of course. "What can I do for you?" "You can stop," she said. "The podcast, the website, the systematic destruction of people's lives. It ends now." "I'm not sure what you're referring to." Dr. Hoffman pulled out a tablet and showed him a detailed analysis of the Truth About Trinity website, the podcast episodes, and the social media campaign against Kane. "Digital forensics is a wonderful thing," she said. "All of this traces back to accounts you created, IP addresses you used, even writing patterns that match your academic papers." Logan studied the evidence with professional interest. Thorough work. Expensive work. Who's paying for this level of investigation, Doctor? People who understand that justice and revenge aren't the same thing. Sometimes they are. Dr. Hoffman stepped closer. "Kane is in prison. Denise has lost everything. Doctor, Graves' life is ruined. How many more people need to suffer for your wounded pride?" Logan felt the familiar cold clarity settle over him. "You're working for someone. Who?" "People who care about collateral damage. Children who lose their fathers. Wives who lose their husbands. Communities that lose their faith." Kane's other victims? Dr. Hoffman's silence was answer enough. Logan understood now. The wives Kane had manipulated, the families he'd destroyed. They'd banded together, hired investigators, maybe even lawyers. They wanted Logan to stop his campaign because it was exposing their own secrets, their own complicity. "How much do they know?" Logan asked. "Everything. Your methods, your evidence, your plans. They want to offer you something." "I'm listening." Dr. Hoffman handed him an envelope. "A way out. Clean identity, New city, enough money to start over. All you have to do is disappear. Logan opened the envelope. Inside was a cashier's check for $500,000 and documentation for a new identity, complete with social security number, driver's license, and employment history. Professional work? Very expensive. And if I refuse, they'll expose you. Every illegal recording, every fraud you've committed, every law you've broken. You'll spend the next decade in prison. Logan studied the check, the documents, the woman offering them. Then he looked up at the empty church where Cain had once preached about forgiveness and redemption. There's one problem with your offer, Doctor. What's that? Logan smiled. The expression he'd perfected over the past year, cold and precise as a scalpel. You assume I want a way out. He handed the envelope back to her. Tell your clients that Logan Reese is dead. The man they're trying to threaten died 18 months ago when his wife decided to destroy his life. Then who are you? Logan walked back toward his car, calling over his shoulder. Someone who learned that the only way to win this game is to burn the board, Doctor. Hoffman stood alone in the church parking lot, holding an envelope full of worthless promises as Logan drove away into the darkness. He had work to do. The next morning, Logan published a new podcast episode titled The Cleanup Crew. It detailed the conspiracy of Cain's victims to silence him, complete with audio recordings of his conversation with Dr. Hoffman. By noon, the story had exploded across social media. The women who'd tried to buy Logan's silence found themselves exposed as co-conspirators who'd known about Cain's crimes and done nothing to stop him. 3 more arrests followed within the week. Logan sat in his apartment surrounded by multiple monitors displaying news feeds, social media streams, and legal databases. He'd become a one-man intelligence operation tracking every thread of the web he'd woven. His phone rang. Unknown number. You can't keep this up forever, a voice said. Female, older, frightened. Watch me, Logan replied and hung up. He opened a new document and began typing. There were still loose threads to tie up, still people who thought they could escape the consequences of their choices. Logan had become very good at showing them otherwise. The conservator who'd once preserved other people's stories had learned to write his own ending, and he was just getting started.